Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive with us. Today we're going to be looking at the JFK assassination.
Yeah.
But not the stuff you usually hear about.
Right?
We're going to be looking at some dissenting voices,
Mm-hmm.
some people who weren't so sure about the official story.
Yeah, this is really fascinating stuff. We're talking about members of the Warren Commission itself.
Yeah, the Warren Commission. Now, for anyone who might not know,
Right.
the Warren Commission was the group that was put together to investigate the assassination right after it happened.
Exactly. They had a huge job figuring out what happened to Kennedy and trying to reassure a nation and a world that was on edge.
Right in the middle of the Cold War, too.
Absolutely. The stakes were incredibly high.
So they came up with this report, right? The Warren report?
Well, yeah, and that report concluded that Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone.
The lone gunman theory.
Yeah. But what's interesting is that not everyone on the commission agreed with that conclusion.
Right. That's what we're diving into today. Two senators in particular, Richard Russell and John Sherman Cooper, had some major doubts.
And these weren't just any senators. These were highly respected figures.
Yeah, Russell was a real powerhouse. He chaired the Senate Appropriations Committee.
Yeah, and he was deeply involved in the civil rights debates of the time. A very influential figure.
So not some lightweight who could be easily dismissed.
Not at all. He took his role on the commission incredibly seriously.
So what did he do that made him stand out?
Well, he read every single page of testimony.
Wow.
And he insisted on additional questioning of Marina Oswald, Lee Harvey Oswald's widow.
Interesting. What did they learn from her?
It actually came out that the FBI had been putting a lot of pressure on Marina, which might have affected her earlier testimony.
Oh, wow. So they might not have been getting the full story.
Exactly. It raised serious questions about the reliability of the information the commission was working with.
Okay, so we've got Russell digging deep and uncovering some potentially shady stuff.
Mm-hmm.
What about this other senator, John Sherman Cooper?
Cooper was another highly respected figure known for his diligence and thoroughness. And he was so concerned about the secrecy surrounding the investigation that he kept his work on the commission totally separate from his Senate staff.
Really?
Yeah. Nobody else was allowed to know what he was looking at or who he was talking to.
Wow, that's intense. It sounds like they were dealing with some really sensitive information.
They were. And this whole single bullet theory was at the heart of it all.
Okay, so back to that theory. Can you remind us what exactly it claimed?
Sure. The single bullet theory basically said that one bullet caused all the non-fatal wounds to both President Kennedy and Governor Connally, who was riding with him in the motorcade.
One bullet for all those wounds.
That's what the theory claimed.
I can see why people might have doubts about that.
Yeah, and Russell and Cooper were two of them. They just couldn't accept it based on the evidence they were seeing.
So it wasn't just a gut feeling. They had concrete reasons to be skeptical.
Exactly. The ballistics just didn't add up for them. The bullet's supposed trajectory, the number of wounds, the timing of the shots, it just didn't make sense.
So they're basically saying it's physically impossible for one bullet to have done all that damage.
Pretty much. And remember, these are experienced and respected figures. They knew what they were talking about.
So we have these two senators basically saying we don't buy the official story.
Right, and that's huge. Because the single bullet theory was crucial to the lone gunman conclusion. If you take that away, the whole Warren report starts to crumble.
So what happened? Did anyone listen to them?
Well, that's what we're going to get into next.
Okay, stay tuned.
Yeah, this is where it gets really interesting.
We'll be right back after a short break.
Don't go anywhere.
We've got a lot more to uncover.
That's for sure.
Stay with us.
We'll be back right after this
to delve even deeper
into the JFK assassination.
You won't want to miss it. That's the big question, isn't it? Did anyone listen?
Yeah, what happened to their concerns?
Well, the Warren report did mention some dissenting opinions.
Okay.
But ultimately, it stuck with the single bullet theory and the lone gunman conclusion.
So basically, they were ignored.
In a way, yeah. You have to wonder if there was pressure to present a united front.
Right. Even if it meant brushing some serious doubts under the rug.
It's definitely possible. Remember, this was during the Cold War.
Oh, yeah, tensions were high.
Exactly. The country was already on edge.
And then the assassination happened.
Right. So publicly questioning the official story could have been seen as...
like making things worse.
Yeah. Potentially destabilizing.
So they had to balance the truth with...
need to keep things calm.
Right. I guess that makes sense in a way.
It does. But it also raises questions about how transparent government investigations really are.
And how much political pressure influences their findings.
Exactly. It's something to think about.
Okay, so you've got these two senators saying, we're not buying it, but they stay silent.
Right.
What about anyone else? Did anyone else speak out?
There were other dissenting voices, but they were often dismissed or marginalized. There's another detail in the Kennedy Assassination Chronicles that we should talk about.
Oh, yeah. You mean that weird silver dollar thing?
Yes, the silver dollar communication.
What was it all about? It sounded kind of cryptic.
It was. It refers to a phone call that the Army received just minutes before the assassination.
A phone call? Like right before Kennedy was shot?
Yep. It came in to Fort Sam Houston in San Antonio.
Okay.
The caller asked for the silver dollar war room.
The silver dollar war room?
Yeah, but the Army said they didn't have a war room by that name.
Wait, so they had no idea what silver dollar meant?
Apparently not.
Yeah.
Which is pretty strange when you think about it.
Yeah, especially if it's related to presidential security.
Right. You'd think they'd be aware of their own code words.
So what happened next?
Well, an Army intelligence agent named Ed Coyle was sent to Dallas to investigate.
To figure out what this silver dollar thing was all about.
Exactly. He eventually tracked down an Army Nike missile unit that used that code word.
So it was a real code word?
Yeah, it was a signal to indicate that Air Force 2 was in the air and operational.
Air Force 2, the vice president's plane. But why would Fort Sam Houston be in the dark about it?
That's a good question. It seems like a pretty big communication breakdown.
Especially considering what was about to happen.
Yeah, the timing is definitely suspicious.
So we've got these powerful figures disagreeing with the official story. And then this weird phone call right before the assassination. It's like something out of a movie.
It's definitely a lot to process. But I think it's important to remember that these deep dives are all about exploring different perspectives.
Right. Not just accepting the official narrative at face value.
Exactly. We need to be open to different possibilities and willing to ask tough questions.
Okay, but where do we go from here? How do we make sense of all this conflicting information?
Well, I think the first step is to acknowledge that the JFK assassination is a complex event.
Right.
With many layers. We may never know the complete truth.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean we should stop searching for it.
So we need to consider all the evidence.
Yes, weigh the different perspectives, and be willing to challenge our own assumptions.
That's a great point. It's about embracing the ambiguity.
Exactly. Recognizing that history is rarely neat and tidy.
And sometimes the most interesting stories are the ones that leave us with more questions than answers.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's bring it back to Russell and Cooper for a second. They had these doubts, but they stayed silent. Why do you think that was?
It's a question that's been debated for years. Some historians think they felt a sense of duty.
To present a united front.
Yeah, especially during a time of national crisis.
Right.
Others argue that maybe they were pressured to keep quiet.
Yeah, I can see how speaking out against the official story, especially about something like this, could be seen as really controversial.
Exactly. And this was a different time.
Oh, yeah.
Loyalty to party and country was extremely important.
Right.
Publicly challenging the official narrative could have been seen as almost unpatriotic.
It's interesting to think about the pressures they must have faced.
Yeah, both internal and external.
It really shows how complex truth-seeking can be.
And how difficult it can be to speak truth to power.
Okay, so we've got these dissenting senators, a mysterious phone call, and a whole lot of unanswered questions. What's next?
Well, there's one more detail from the Chronicles that we need to discuss.
Okay.
And it involves someone who was very close to the events of that day.
Who's that?
President Lyndon B. Johnson.
LBJ. Wait, are we going down the LBJ conspiracy rabbit hole?
Not exactly, but there is something in this issue of the Chronicles that sheds some light on LBJ's perspective on the assassination.
And it's related to those doubts about the single bullet theory.
Yes, it is.
Okay, now I'm really intrigued. Tell me more.
Okay, so according to the Chronicles, President Johnson actually expressed some doubts about the single bullet theory himself.
No way. Seriously, LBJ himself.
Yeah, privately, of course.
Wow. But why keep it quiet? I mean, if he had doubts, you'd think.
Well, think about it. This is the guy who took over after Kennedy.
Right, he became president.
Exactly, and the country was already in shock.
Yeah, total chaos.
So if the president starts questioning the official story publicly...
It could make things even worse.
Exactly. It could have been a disaster.
So he kept his doubts to himself.
It seems that way.
But still, makes you wonder what was going on in his head.
Right. What did he really believe? Did he ever share his doubts with anyone else? We may never know.
It's like this whole other layer of mystery.
Yeah, it really is.
So if even LBJ had doubts, what does that say about the Warren Report?
I think it shows how important it is to question things.
To not just accept the official story.
Right. Just because something is presented as the truth
Doesn't mean it's the whole truth.
Exactly. There might be other perspectives, conflicting evidence, things we don't know.
This whole deep dive has really made me
I
think.
too.
It's like history isn't just about what's in the textbooks.
It's about understanding how complex things really are.
The motivations, the different viewpoints, the things we might never know.
Yeah, history is messy. Like that.
Exactly. So what's the big takeaway for our listeners today?
I think it's about being skeptical, asking questions, not just accepting what you're told.
Think for yourself.
Yeah, to dig deeper, look for different perspectives, because the truth is often more complicated than we think.
Well said. So that wraps up our deep dive into the dissenting voices of the JFK assassination.
It's been quite a journey.
Thanks for joining us, everyone. And remember, keep questioning, keep exploring, and never stop searching for the truth.